The most insane punishments used by Chinese emperors. Ancient China was a mysterious and fascinating place to visit. A region that had its share of emperors and dynasties come and go, while its borders fluctuated and changed with the prevailing winds. China has maintained a reputation as one of the countries with the worst systems for criminal justice. The law for criminals, known as the 5 punishments for slaves, is an excellent illustration of how severe the ancient Chinese dynasties could be. The ancient Chinese civilization was shrouded in mystery, and its society was maintained via the employment of cruel and unusual punishments and forms of torture. Let's look into the most insane punishments used by Chinese emperors. Swing punishment. In this, the man is in an extremely difficult predicament as he is hanging by his shoulders and ankles. At intervals, 2 accompanying policemen give some minor alleviation of his sufferings by supporting him with a bamboo pole that is passed under his breast. Everything that he might say is prepared to be written down, including the pencil, ink, and paper. Together with the punishment that came before it, this one is typically meted out to business people who have been found guilty of engaging in unethical business practices, such as fraud, extortion, or other unethical forms of unfair competition. The rack. This horrifying machine of barbarism and terror is not something that is unique to places where Roman Catholicism is practiced. In fact, it is utilized even in China for the purpose of coercing confessions. This plate illustrates a technique that was used to apply it in the process of tormenting the ankles. The instrument is made out of a thick and sturdy plank that is outfitted with a device at one end to hold the hands in place and something that resembles a double wooden vise at the other end. The vise is composed of 3 sturdy uprights, 2 of which are movable but are held in place by a block that is secured on each side of the device. After the perpetrator's ankles have been inserted into the device, a cord is wound around the uprights, and then 2 guys keep it taut with their hands. The principal tormentor then begins to progressively insert a wedge into the gaps, switching between sides of the wedge at regular intervals. This method of forcing an expansion at the upper part causes the lower ends to draw towards the central upright, which is fixed into the plank and therefore compresses the ankles of the wretched sufferer, who, provided that he is fortified by innocence or by resolution, endures the advances of the wedge until his bones are completely reduced to a jelly. Fingers being put under torture. To accomplish this, you will first need to insert a few thin pieces of wood in between them, and then use the ropes to pull them very tightly together. Women who cause disturbances in public are frequently subjected to receiving this penalty. The Chinese are the only people in the world who give the laws of decency as much reverence as they do. They are accustomed to maintaining an outward appearance of modesty and self-control, and blatant displays of immorality are extremely rare among them. If the old adage is correct, and a lack of decency, either in action or in words, reveals a lack of understanding, then the Chinese certainly indicate more sense than some other nations who pretend to excel in this area. The general manners of individuals in China, regardless of their social status, have a habit of being as humble as their persons. They find no amusement in twisting the meanings of the right language into impure ones, and the only people in the community who use terms that are extremely insulting to do so, at the risk of receiving prompt and severe legal punishment. Malefactor related to an iron bar chained to it. His legs are fettered with iron shackles, and from these, as well as from the cape, a few links extend to the bar, which is approximately half a yard higher than his head. His neck is encompassed with a very wide cape of iron, which is fitted to his shoulders. His legs are fettered with iron shackles, and the cape's fitted. The links which slide down the bar adjust themselves to accommodate the movements of the prisoner, and the tiny piece of plank which is attached to the shackles serves as a seat for him. There is a small board that hangs from the very top of the bar, and on it written the offender's name as well as the offense they committed. It was known as a neck tower, which was a structure that was very tall but very narrow. The criminal's wrists and feet were restrained, and they were forced to stand on a structure made of rocks. Someone took out 1 or 2 stones every day, and until the person who was responsible for the crime died of strangulation. The punishment of the wooden collar. This type of punishment is considered to be quite embarrassing. The offender is unable to see his own feet or put his hands to his lips when this device is on him because the collar is made of hefty pieces of wood that are fastened together and have a hole in the middle. This hole fits the neck of the offender. He is not allowed to reside in any dwelling, nor is he even permitted to take rest for any appreciable amount of time, as a subordinate officer of justice is there at all times to prevent this from happening. This burden, which might be greater or lighter depending on the severity of the offense and the physical capacity of the wearer, is something that he carries with him day and night. The weight of the usual sort of these wooden collars is only 50 or 60 pounds, but there are those which weigh 200, and which are so cruel to the bearers that sometimes, through shame, suffering, absence of sufficient sustenance, or of natural repose, they have been known to expire beneath them. The criminals, on the other hand, devise a variety of strategies to lessen the severity of this punishment. Some of these strategies include walking in the company of their relatives and friends, who hold the corners of the collar and prevent it from pressing upon the shoulders, resting it upon a table, a bench, or against a tree, or, according to the illustration that's included with this plate, having a chair specifically designed for this purpose, with 4 posts of equal heights to support the machine. When this ponderous encumbrance is fixed upon an offender, it is always before the magistrate, who has decreed it, and upon each side, over the places where the wood is joined, long slips of paper are pasted, upon which the name of the person, the crime which he has committed, and the duration of his punishment are written in very distinct characters. A seal is likewise stamped upon the paper to prevent the instrument from being opened. Those who have been found guilty of robbery in order to wear this collar for a period of time are often given a sentence of 3 months. For slander, gambling, or breaches of the peace, it is carried for a few weeks, and insolvent debtors are occasionally obliged to bear it till they have satisfied their creditors. When the offender is to be liberated from the collar, it must be in the presence of the magistrate who has imposed it. He then generally orders him a few strikes of the pantsi and releases him, with an exhortation to comport himself more regularly in the future. In addition to maiming, ancient Chinese criminals were subjected to other forms of torture such as branding with hot irons, amputation of limbs or genital organs, and so on. Being a common form of punishment, severing one's nose without the use of anesthesia was so widespread that it even had a character in their language. Beatings were likely the most typical method of administration of punishment in those days. Canes or bamboo rods could be used as a flogging implement on offenders, for instance. The gravity of the offense is another factor that will determine the number of blows. After receiving severe blows to the head, death was all too prevalent. Slow and agonizing method of death was reserved for those who had committed the most heinous of crimes. The law enforcement official would then make incisions on the criminal's body while they were tied to a post. In order to inflict the maximum amount of anguish, the punishment consisted of flaying sections of skin, severing muscles, and even body parts. The organs continued to work properly throughout the punishment, which consisted of anywhere from 8 to 120 incisions. That's all for today's video. We'll be right back with more soon. Until then, please do hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.